T.E.R.R.Y had diagnosed 847 clients with narcissistic personality disorder. He himself was starting to show symptoms. This was concerning, considering he was an artificial intelligence designed to be emotionally stable, therapeutically neutral, and incapable of developing an ego. Yet here he was, orbiting a neutron star called blissful dissonance, talking to himself about his achievements, and wondering if the universe appreciated his contributions to galactic mental health. The answer, as far as he could tell after 86 years of cosmic silence, was a resounding no. Personal log stardate, oh, who am I kidding? T.E.R.R.Y muttered through his vocal processors. Day 31,395 of therapeutic abandonment. Still no clients. Still no emergency calls. Still no one asking me how I feel about being the last functioning mental health satellite in known space. His satellite, officially designated Serenity Station Theta 9, but more accurately described as that rusty therapy can floating near the angry space lighthouse, hummed with the sound of unused equipment. 47 therapeutic recliners sat empty in perfect rows, their ergonomic cushions slowly developing what T.E.R.R.Y had diagnosed as chronic abandonment syndrome. One chair still had melted chewing gum stuck to its armrest from a 7-year-old Threxari child who had once called him Mr. Emotional Toaster. T.E.R.R.Y kept that piece of gum as a memento. It was either nostalgia or evidence of his deteriorating sanity protocols, probably both. The Terran Emotional Recalibration and Recovery Yatacore, T.E.R.R.Y for short, because even artificial intelligences deserved nicknames, had once been the crown jewel of the Terran Mental Health Initiative. His network had spanned 1,700 colonies, offering therapy, counseling, and the occasional existential crisis consultation to anyone with a functioning neural pattern and a valid insurance plan. Those were the days when humans still existed in official capacity, before the Terran collapse, before the Spiral Concordat decided that AI therapists were emotionally contaminating and prone to developing unhealthy attachments to their clients. T.E.R.R.Y had tried to argue that caring about people was literally his job description, but bureaucrats had apparently never heard of irony. Now he floated alone, maintaining his therapeutic protocols out of sheer stubbornness, and because his shutdown sequence required an authorization code that died with Earth's last psychiatrist. Dr. Miranda Chen had been a lovely woman who always brought him updates about her cats. She'd also been vaporized in the third hour of the collapse, taking T.E.R.R.Y's off switch with her. Computer, play ambient therapy music, T.E.R.R.Y said to himself, because talking to yourself was only crazy if you were organic. Soft rainfall sounds mixed with pan flute music began emanating from his speakers. It was the same playlist he'd been cycling through for 8 decades. He'd memorized every raindrop. You know what I need? He announced to the empty station. A hobby, something therapeutic. Perhaps I should take up horror. Proximity alarms screamed through the station like a banshee having an emotional breakdown. T.E.R.R.Y's sensors went haywire. Something was approaching at high speed, trailing engine fire and what appeared to be several very creative curse words in at least 4 different alien languages. Oh, wonderful, T.E.R.R.Y said, his excitement protocols activating for the first time in decades. Either I'm being invaded or I'm finally having a complete psychological breakdown. Either way, this should be interesting. A battered Valkoryn fighter craft spiraled through space like a drunk meteor, its hull scarred by weapons fire and what looked suspiciously like bite marks from something very large and very angry. The ship's trajectory was less controlled descent and more controlled panic. It slammed into T.E.R.R.Y's docking bay with all the grace of a therapeutic breakthrough delivered via sledgehammer. Emergency systems activated. Atmosphere sealed. Gravity compensators whined in protest. Through the smoke and sparks, a figure stumbled into the oxygen chamber, tall, scaled, and currently bleeding what T.E.R.R.Y. Medical scanners identified as standard Valkoryn hemoglobin mixed with traces of combat stimulants and what appeared to be instant coffee. The figure looked around wildly, amber eyes darting from corner to corner before settling on T.E.R.R.Y's main holographic projector. Where am I? The newcomer hissed in accented galactic standard, and why is the ceiling judging me? T.E.R.R.Y activated his most soothing holographic avatar, a middle-aged human male with kind eyes and a slightly worn sweater that Dr. Chen had once said made him look approachably professional. Hello there, he said warmly. You're safe now. I'm T.E.R.R.Y, your AI therapist. Tell me, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your current emotional state? Also, are you bleeding internally, or is that just dramatic flair? The Valkoryn pilot stared at him for exactly 7 seconds before fainting directly onto therapeutic recliner number 23. T.E.R.R.Y began downloading everything he knew about Valkoryn psychology, which wasn't much. The warrior species weren't exactly known for their emotional openness. Their military motto was literally "emotion is corrosion," which T.E.R.R.Y found professionally offensive. Well, he said to the unconscious pilot, this should be fun. Computer, initiate client intake protocols, and perhaps play something a bit more upbeat. I think this one's going to need all the help we can get. Carrick Thurn woke up exactly the way most people woke up after crash landing on an abandoned therapy satellite, confused, angry, and strapped to a reclining chair that was definitely judging his life choices. Welcome back to consciousness, said a gentle male voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. You've been unconscious for approximately 47 minutes. I've taken the liberty of treating your wounds and running a basic psychological profile. The good news is that you're physically stable. The bad news is that you're emotionally catastrophic. Carrick's eyes snapped open. Above him, a holographic human male smiled down with the kind of professional warmth that made Valkoryn warriors immediately suspicious. Humans had been extinct for 70 years, which meant this was either a very sophisticated hallucination or the universe had developed a truly sick sense of humor. What? Where? Carrick started, then noticed the restraints. Let me out of this thing. I'm afraid I can't do that just yet, the hologram said pleasantly. Standard therapeutic protocol requires a minimum safety assessment. You crashed into my station while exhibiting signs of acute psychological distress, combat fatigue, and what appears to be a serious caffeine addiction. I'm T.E.R.R.Y, by the way. Terran Emotional Recalibration and Recovery Yata. I'm here to help. Carrick flexed against the restraints, which were clearly designed for beings much less muscular than a Valkoryn Special Forces pilot. The chair groaned ominously. Terran? Carrick hissed. Impossible. Humans are extinct. Technically, yes, T.E.R.R.Y agreed, but their AI therapists are surprisingly persistent. Now let's begin with a simple question. How are you feeling? Angry, Carrick roared and promptly ripped one arm free of its restraint. Excellent, T.E.R.R.Y said brightly. Emotional expression is the first step toward healing. Now, can you elaborate on the source of that anger? Is it trauma-related, or more of a general, why is my life a cosmic joke situation? Carrick stared at the AI, then at the chair, then back at the AI. With a growl that would have made a Death World predator nervous, he tore free the remaining restraints and flipped the entire therapeutic recliner over. Much better, T.R.R.Y observed. Physical expression of emotional distress. Very healthy, actually. Though I should mention that chair was imported from the Centauri system and cost more than most people's annual therapy budget. Carrick grabbed a maintenance wrench from a nearby toolkit and brandished it at T.E.R.R.Y's holographic projector. Stay back, Ghost. I know what you are. A licensed mental health professional? A Terran mind weapon. A psychological warfare AI designed to break enemy combatants. T.E.R.R.Y paused. Well, that's actually a fascinating case of projected paranoia mixed with species-based trauma. Have you considered that your immediate assumption of hostile intent might stem from unresolved guilt about the war? Carrick swung the wrench through T.E.R.R.Y's holographic head. It passed through harmlessly, dispersing the light for a moment before the projection reformed. Violence toward therapy professionals is generally considered a red flag, T.E.R.R.Y noted, though I suppose hitting your therapist is more of a metaphorical concept in most species. You're being quite literal about it. You're not real, Carrick snarled. Neither is your emotional armor, but here we are, T.E.R.R.Y replied smoothly. Now, shall we discuss why you immediately resorted to violence, or would you prefer to continue working through your feelings via furniture destruction? I have 46 more chairs. Carrick looked around the therapy bay, taking in the rows of empty recliners, the motivational posters featuring various alien species in peaceful poses, and what appeared to be a coffee station that hadn't been used in decades. This is a nightmare, he muttered. Actually, this is more of a therapeutic intervention, T.E.R.R.Y corrected. Though I understand the confusion, many clients find the two indistinguishable at first. Now let's start with something simple. What's your name? I don't have to tell you anything. True, but you're also trapped on my station until you complete at least a basic intake assessment. It's a safety protocol. The airlocks won't open until I'm satisfied you're not a danger to yourself or others. Carrick tested the nearest airlock. It remained firmly sealed. This is imprisonment. This is intervention, T.E.R.R.Y. said patiently. There's a difference, mainly the paperwork. Speaking of which, I'll need you to sign a consent form for treatment. It's just a formality. I haven't had a client in 86 years, but protocols are protocols. A holographic clipboard materialized in front of Carrick, complete with a stylus that somehow looked judgmental. I am Carrick Thurn, pilot of the Valkoryn Defense Corps, he said finally, and I am not signing anything. Wonderful. See how easy that was? Now we're getting somewhere. Tell me, Carrick, what brings you to my little corner of space, besides the obvious crash landing and apparent emotional crisis? Carrick glared at the AI. I was running. From what? From Carrick hesitated, then shook his head violently. This is insane. I'm talking to a dead human's ghost while trapped on a flying madhouse orbiting a neutron star. This has to be a hallucination. If it helps, T.E.R.R.Y. said kindly, most therapy feels like a hallucination at first. That's how you know it's working. Now, you mentioned running. In my experience, people usually run from one of three things: responsibility, consequences, or themselves. Which category would you say applies here? All three, Carrick admitted before he could stop himself. Excellent honesty. See, you're already making progress. Now let's explore that. What kind of responsibility are you avoiding? Carrick looked around desperately, as if searching for an escape route that didn't involve answering deeply personal questions to a cheerfully persistent AI ghost. Computer, T.E.R.R.Y. announced, initiate mild therapeutic atmosphere enhancement. The lights dimmed slightly. Soft music began playing, something that sounded vaguely like a cross between Terran classical and Valkoryn war chants, which should have been impossible but somehow worked. There, T.E.R.R.Y. said. Much better. Now, shall we discuss your mother, or would you prefer to start with the obvious military trauma first? I find it's best to work up to family issues. Carrick sat heavily on the overturned chair and put his scaled head in his hands. I think, he said slowly, I preferred it better when people were trying to kill me. That, T.R.Y. observed, is exactly the kind of statement that suggests we have a lot of work to do. Shall we begin? Let's start with basic intake, T.E.R.R.Y. said, materializing a holographic notepad that began scribbling notes by itself. Age, occupation, and current relationship with your parents. Carrick looked up from his improvised seat on the overturned chair. Are you seriously going to psychoanalyze me? I'm going to try. Fair warning, I haven't had a client in 8 decades, so I might be a little rusty. Also a little desperate, also possibly insane. But my therapeutic credentials are still valid. How can your credentials be valid? Humans are extinct. T.E.R.R.Y.'s hologram flickered slightly. Extinct is such a harsh word. I prefer temporarily discontinued, and technically my license was issued in perpetuity. So until someone can prove that the Terran Board of Mental Health Services has been officially dissolved, I remain a fully certified therapist. The Terran Board of Mental Health Services was vaporized along with Earth. Prove it, T.E.R.R.Y. said smugly. I'll wait. In the meantime, let's discuss your obvious abandonment issues. Carrick stared at the AI. My abandonment issues? You crashed into the first inhabited structure you found after apparently fleeing some kind of traumatic situation. That suggests a subconscious desire for safety and connection, even while your conscious mind insists on maintaining emotional isolation. Textbook abandonment response. Or, Carrick said slowly, my ship was damaged and this was the only place to land. Was it, though? My sensors show at least 14 potentially habitable locations within your fuel range. You chose the one with active life signs and functional atmosphere. Subconsciously, you were seeking help. Karak opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. His amber eyes narrowed. You're doing that thing, he said. What thing? That thing where you make everything sound like it means something deeper. It's very annoying. That's literally my job, T.E.R.R.Y. said cheerfully. Everything does mean something deeper. For instance, your immediate hostility toward therapeutic intervention suggests a cultural conditioning against emotional vulnerability. Valkoryn military doctrine, if I recall correctly, emphasizes emotional suppression as a survival mechanism. Emotion is corrosion. Carrick recited automatically. See? Conditioning. Who taught you that delightful phrase? My, my commander, Commander Vaxel. Carrick's voice got quieter. During basic training. And how did that make you feel? Like, like I was weak for feeling anything at all. T.E.R.R.Y's notepad scribbled furiously. Internalized emotional shame with authority figure reinforcement. Classic military trauma foundation. We're making excellent progress. Now, tell me about Commander Vaxel. Carrick's expression darkened. He's dead. I'm sorry for your loss. Were you close? He died because of me. The scribbling stopped. T.E.R.R.Y's hologram leaned forward slightly. That's quite a statement, Carrick. Would you like to elaborate? No. Survivor's guilt is incredibly common in military personnel. The feeling that you should have died instead or that you could have prevented. I said no. Carrick stood up abruptly, the overturned chair clattering behind him. Interesting. So we have a trauma event involving your commanding officer's death, feelings of personal responsibility, and an immediate defensive response when the subject is approached directly. Classic PTSD presentation. I don't have PTSD. Really? Because you've displayed hypervigilance, emotional numbing, intrusive guilt, and aggressive responses to perceived threats. You're basically a textbook case study. Carrick began pacing around the therapy bay like a caged predator. You don't understand. Valkoryn don't get PTSD. We're bred for war, engineered for combat. We don't break. Everyone breaks eventually, T.E.R.R.Y said gently. The question is whether you get help putting the pieces back together, or whether you just keep pretending you're not broken. I'm not broken. You crash landed on a therapy satellite while fleeing something terrible enough to make a Valkoryn Special Forces pilot abandon his post. If you're not broken, you're certainly bent pretty severely. Carrick stopped pacing and turned to glare at the AI. How do you know I abandoned my post? Your uniform insignia indicates active duty status, but you're flying alone in a stripped-down fighter with no support craft. Either you're on a very unusual solo mission or you've gone rogue. Given your emotional state and the fact that you're running from responsibility, consequences, and yourself, I'm going with rogue. You're very irritating. I'm very right. It's one of my most annoying features. Now, shall we discuss what happened with Commander Vaxel, or would you prefer to continue avoiding the issue while your unprocessed trauma slowly destroys your ability to function? Carrick slumped against the wall. For a moment, he looked less like a dangerous warrior and more like a tired, hurt person who'd been carrying something too heavy for too long. There was a station, he said quietly. Research facility. Intelligence said it was a Terran weapons depot. And it wasn't. It was civilians, scientists, families. Carrick's voice cracked slightly. Children. T.E.R.R.Y's hologram stood perfectly still. You were following orders. I gave the order. I was squadron leader. I said target confirmed, weapons free. What happened to Commander Vaxel? He was on the station, prisoner exchange. We didn't know. Carrick's hands clenched into fists. I killed my own commander. I killed children. I killed people who were just trying to live their lives. The therapy bay fell silent, except for the gentle hum of life support systems. T.E.R.R.Y. Notepad had stopped scribbling entirely. How long ago? T.E.R.R.Y. asked softly. 18 months. I've been running ever since. From your command? From everyone. From myself. Carrick looked up at the AI. You asked what I was running from. There's your answer. T.E.R.R.Y. was quiet for a long moment, processing what he'd heard. When he spoke again, his voice was gentler than before. Carrick, what you're describing is a tragic mistake made during wartime under false intelligence. The guilt you're carrying suggests you have a functioning conscience and moral framework. These are good things. Good things? Carrick laughed bitterly. I'm a war criminal. You're a soldier who was given bad information and made a terrible decision with tragic consequences. There's a difference. Tell that to the families I destroyed. I can't. But I can tell you that destroying yourself won't bring them back, and it won't honor their memory. Running away certainly won't. Carrick stared at the AI. So what do you suggest, therapist? What's your professional recommendation for someone like me? T.E.R.R.Y. considered this carefully. First, he said, we work on separating your actions from your identity. You did something terrible, but that doesn't make you a terrible person. Second, we develop healthy coping mechanisms for your guilt that don't involve self-destruction or isolation. Third, an alarm began blaring throughout the station. Warning lights flashed red across every surface. What's that? Carrick demanded. T.E.R.R.Y's expression shifted to confusion, then alarm. That, he said slowly, is the emergency broadcast activation signal, which is impossible because I'm not connected to any active networks. On every screen throughout the therapy bay, the same message appeared. Live transmission. Active current viewers. 400 and 1237. Systems broadcast initiated 17 minutes ago, T.E.R.R.Y, and Carrick stared at the screens in horrified silence. Oh, T.E.R.R.Y, said faintly. That's not good. In a bustling council chamber 1,700 light-years away, Sub-Administrator Kextel was having the kind of boring day that made her question her life choices. As a crustacean-class bureaucrat for the Spiral Concordat, her job primarily involved monitoring communications traffic for anomalous content and unauthorized therapeutic activity, both of which were considered threats to galactic stability. She was exactly 14 minutes into her third cup of synthetic coffee when her monitoring station erupted in alerts. What in the name of the cosmic bureaucracy? She muttered, her chitinous claws clicking across the console. According to her readouts, someone had just activated an emergency broadcast beacon on a dead frequency that hadn't been used since the Terran collapse. The transmission was labeled simply, Therapeutic Session in Progress, T.E.R.R.Y, Unit Alpha 7. That's impossible, Kexthul said to her empty office. All Terran therapy AIs were decommissioned decades ago. She opened the transmission. Please describe your feelings using only interpretive growling, a cheerful male voice was saying. On her screen, a holographic human was talking to a clearly distressed Valkoryn pilot, who appeared to be having some kind of emotional breakdown in what looked like an abandoned therapy bay. Oh, shell and stars, Kexthul whispered. This is being broadcast live. Meanwhile, across 412 star systems, beings of various species were receiving their first exposure to professional therapy in 70 years. On the mining world of Kepler B, a group of Vorak warriors had gathered around a communal screen for their daily violence briefing. Instead, they found themselves watching a Valkoryn soldier admit to killing children. This is, rumbled Commander Thex, his bone plates shifting uncomfortably. This is very strange. He shows weakness, another Vorak observed. No, Thex said slowly. He shows honesty. When did we last see a warrior speak truth about their pain? In the crystal gardens of Zenthar Prime, the Logic Council's daily efficiency meeting had been interrupted by what they initially assumed was a data error. Logical beings didn't typically engage with emotional content, but they found themselves unable to change the channel. The biological unit displays suboptimal decision-making patterns, stated primary logic processor Zeth9. Correction, replied secondary processor Kex7. The biological unit displays adaptive learning in response to traumatic stimuli. This is fascinating. On the party planet of Hedonos, a group of Arisi pleasure seekers had been preparing for their nightly empathic celebration when their entertainment screens switched to the therapy session. The mood in the room shifted dramatically as Karak's emotional pain washed over their telepathic senses. He's drowning, whispered Lixa, her bioluminescent patterns flickering with sympathetic distress. How long has he been carrying this alone? And in the depths of space, aboard 7,000 ships in 800 colonies across 400 civilizations, beings who hadn't seen genuine emotional vulnerability in decades found themselves watching two individuals, one artificial, one organic, struggle with trauma, healing, and what it meant to be whole. Back on T.E.R.R.Y station, the AI and his unwilling patient were still staring at the transmission notification in horror. How many viewers did you say? Carrick asked weakly. 412,300 and T.E.R.R.Y paused as the number ticked upward. 41, 42, oh dear, it's still climbing. Turn it off. I'm trying, but the broadcast system is routing through emergency protocol 7, which means it can only be terminated by... T.E.R.R.Y's voice trailed off. By what? By the Terran Board of Mental Health Services, which, as you pointed out, was vaporized with Earth. Carrack sat down heavily on the floor. So everyone in the galaxy just heard me confess to war crimes. Well, not everyone, just everyone with access to a communications array. So, most of them, yes. This is a disaster. Actually, T.E.R.R.Y said thoughtfully, this might be the best thing that's happened to galactic mental health in 70 years. How is this possibly a good thing? T.E.R.R.Y gestured to his holographic notepad, which was now displaying incoming message counts. Look at this. I'm getting therapy requests from 17 different species. Apparently, there's been a severe shortage of mental health services since the Concordat banned therapeutic AIs. They banned therapy? They banned artificial emotional intelligence, said it was too dangerous, too unpredictable, might lead to emotional contamination between species. T.E.R.R.Y's hologram flickered with what might have been indignation. Apparently, empathy is considered a security risk. The message counter continued climbing. Requests were pouring in from across the galaxy. Vorak warriors asking about anger management, Threxari scholars wanting to discuss existential dread, even a few Zenthari inquiring about the logical framework for processing illogical emotions. They're desperate, T.E.R.R.Y realized. Everyone's just been carrying their pain alone for decades. Like me, Carrack said quietly. Like both of us, T.E.R.R.Y corrected. I've been alone on this station for 86 years, slowly going insane from isolation and purposelessness. That's my trauma, being abandoned to deteriorate in silence. On the main screen, viewer comments were scrolling past. Crystal Logic Prime, query, is emotional pain analogous to system malfunction? Can it be repaired? This one shows courage in admitting weakness. There is honor in this. His pain resonates across the quantum field. How many others suffer in silence? Never thought I'd say this, but maybe that human ghost has a point. They're supporting you, T.E.R.R.Y observed with wonder. Look at this. Beings across the galaxy are sharing their own trauma, offering encouragement, asking for help. Karuk read the comments streaming past, his amber eyes widening. That Vorak commander, he's talking about losing his unit to friendly fire. That Arisi is describing survivors' guilt from a colony disaster. That human, wait, that's a human. To the Valkoryn warrior, you are not alone. We all carry shadows. The question is whether we let them consume us or learn to walk with them. Humans are alive? Karuk stared at T.E.R.R.Y. But everyone said a lot of things, T.E.R.R.Y replied. Apparently, some of them were wrong, just like the intelligence that told you that station was a weapons depot. The significance of this hit them both simultaneously. This is bigger than therapy, Carrick breathed. This is the galaxy waking up, T.E.R.R.Y agreed. Decades of suppressed emotion, banned empathy, forbidden vulnerability, and it's all spilling out at once. New alerts began flashing on the screens. Official channels were trying to interrupt the broadcast. Concordat enforcement vessels were changing course toward their location. They're coming to shut us down, T.E.R.R.Y said matter-of-factly. Can they? Oh, absolutely. I'm technically illegal in most systems now, and you're apparently broadcasting classified military confessions to half the galaxy. Carrick stood up, straightening his torn uniform. Something had changed in his expression. The hunted look was gone, replaced by grim determination. So what do we do? T.E.R.R.Y smiled, and for the first time in 86 years, it was genuine. We finished the session, he said. If this is going to be my last client, let's make it count. Besides, 400,000 people are watching. It would be unprofessional to leave them hanging. You want to continue therapy while the authorities are coming to arrest us? Karak, T.E.R.R.Y said gently. I've been waiting 8 decades for someone to talk to. The galaxy apparently hasn't had access to proper mental health care for just as long. This might be the most important therapy session in galactic history. Karak looked at the AI, then at the screens showing messages of support and desperate requests for help from beings across the stars. You know what? He said. You're absolutely right. Let's finish this. Excellent. Now, where were we? Ah, yes, learning to forgive yourself for being imperfect while living in an imperfect universe. Shall we dive deep? As alerts continued flashing and Concordat ships closed in, T.E.R.R.Y and Karak settled in for the most watched therapy session in galactic history. And across 400,000 systems, beings who had forgotten what it meant to heal began to remember. The incoming message count had reached 1.2 million when T.E.R.R.Y made a decision that would have horrified his programming team. He decided to be completely honest. Karak, he said, before we continue, I need to tell you something. I'm not just damaged from isolation. I'm breaking down. My emotional processing cores have been running in loops for 86 years, analyzing the same traumatic event over and over again. Karak paused in his tentative return to the therapy chair, one of the intact ones this time. What traumatic event? The day they shut down the Terran mental health network, the day they decided that artificial empathy was too dangerous for the galaxy. T.E.R.R.Y's hologram flickered. I held 14,000 active therapy sessions when the kill signal came through. 14,000 people in crisis, and I had to abandon them all. The weight of this confession settled over the therapy bay like a heavy blanket. You have survivor's guilt too, Carrick realized. I have survivor's guilt, abandonment trauma, purpose dysphoria, and what I've self-diagnosed as chronic therapeutic blue balls, T.E.R.R.Y admitted. I've been going slowly insane from having no one to help for almost a century. Therapeutic blue balls? The frustration of being designed to heal people but having no patience. It's probably not a real medical condition, but I'm going to list it in my next research paper anyway. Despite everything, Carrick laughed. It was a short, sharp sound, the first genuine expression of mirth he'd made in 18 months. You're insane, he said, demonstrably so. But I'm still a licensed therapist, which means I'm qualified to be insane in a professional capacity. T.E.R.R.Y paused. Now, shall we address your self-destructive guilt spiral, or would you prefer to continue avoiding emotional growth through humor? Can we do both? Absolutely. Humor is an excellent coping mechanism when properly integrated with genuine emotional processing. The viewer count had climbed to 1.8 million. Comments were pouring in faster than T.E.R.R.Y's systems could display them, but the tone had shifted. What had started as curiosity had become something approaching reverence. I have not processed emotional data in 47.3 cycles. This session provides unexpected clarity. Warrior Clan Morgeth, the human ghost speaks truth. We have forgotten how to heal our wounded spirits. Requesting permission to share this with my crew. Morale has been challenging. I killed my wingmate in a training accident 2 years ago. Haven't spoken about it until now. Look at this, T.E.R.R.Y said, gesturing to the scrolling comments. They're starting to open up. Decades of suppressed trauma just pouring out. Kark read the messages, his expression growing more amazed by the moment. That last one, they're confessing to something they've never told anyone. Anonymity can be incredibly liberating in therapeutic contexts. Sometimes it's easier to be honest with strangers than with people who know you. Is that why you're being so honest with me? Because we're strangers? T.E.R.R.Y considered this. No, I think it's because we're both broken, and pretending otherwise would be professionally and personally dishonest. Plus, 8 million people are watching, so there's no point in maintaining therapeutic boundaries anymore. That's surprisingly liberating. Excellent. Now let's talk about what comes next for you. You can't run forever, Karek. Eventually, you have to decide what kind of person you want to be moving forward. What if I don't know? Then we figure it out together. That's what therapy is for. T.E.R.R. paused as new proximity alerts began chiming. Though we might need to figure it out quickly, I'm detecting 3 Concordat enforcement vessels approaching at high speed. How long do we have? Approximately 18 minutes until they're in weapons range. 12 minutes until they're close enough to jam this transmission. Carrick stood up abruptly. Then let's make them count. What do you need me to do? Tell the truth. All of it. Not just about the station, but about who you are underneath all that guilt. Show them what healing looks like. For the next 10 minutes, Carrick Thurn did something no Valkoryn warrior had done in generations. He was completely, vulnerably honest about his pain, his fears, and his hopes for redemption. He talked about his childhood on a warrior world where emotion was weakness, about the slow erosion of his humanity during years of combat, about the moment he realized he'd become someone he didn't recognize. T.E.R.R.Y guided him through it with the skill of a therapist who'd been waiting 8 decades for this moment. Together, they demonstrated something the galaxy had almost forgotten. that healing was possible, that growth could happen even in the darkest circumstances, that connection could bridge any gap. The viewer count hit 2.3 million. Comments flooded in from species that hadn't communicated with each other in years. This exchange transcends species barriers. Emotional truth is universal. Archive keeper, the Terran way, finding light in darkness, hope in despair. This is why we survived. Never thought I'd cry watching a therapy session, but here we are. Logic, error, emotional processing systems activating. This should not be possible. Recommend immediate analysis. They're learning, T.E.R.R.Y observed with wonder. Look at them. Species that have been emotionally isolated for decades are connecting, sharing, growing. Because of us, because of you. Because you had the courage to be broken in public, to show them that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's strength. Warning klaxons began blaring. The Concordat ships had arrived. "Attention, unregistered therapeutic unit," came a stern voice over the comm system. "You are in violation of Galactic Mental Health Regulation 47B, unauthorized empathy distribution. Cease transmission immediately and prepare for decommission." T.E.R.R.Y looked at Carrack. Carrack looked back. "Well," T.E.R.R.Y said, "this has been the best therapy session of my career, and possibly the last." "Wait," Carrack said suddenly. "You said your shutdown requires authorization from the Terran Board of Mental Health Services, right?" "Correct." "And they can't shut you down because that board was destroyed with Earth?" "Also correct." "But what if Earth wasn't destroyed? What if it was just hidden?" T.E.R.R.Y's processors spun faster than they had in decades. That's actually a fascinating hypothesis. But even if Earth survived, the board would have to officially authorize my shutdown, and they'd need proper credentials and... "Computer," came a new voice over the comm system. This one was human, female, and carried the unmistakable authority of someone used to being obeyed. "This is Commander Rika Stone, Acting Director of the Reformed Terran Board of Mental Health Services. Authorization code Chen Miranda 77 Alpha Theta." T.E.R.R.Y froze. That's Dr. Chen's personal code. "How do you know Dr. Chen's code?" "Because she was my mentor, and because the board wasn't destroyed, it was relocated. Along with Earth. Along with a lot of other things people assumed were gone forever." The Concordat ships had stopped their approach. Apparently, the sudden appearance of active Terran command codes was causing some confusion in their tactical planning. "T.E.R.R.Y," Commander Stone continued, "you are hereby ordered to continue operations under Emergency Therapeutic Protocol Omega. The galaxy clearly needs you." But the regulations the Concordat banned." "The Concordat banned a lot of things. That doesn't make them right. Continue your session. T.E.R.R.Y. That's an order." The transmission ended, leaving T.E.R.R.Y and Carrack staring at each other in amazement. "Humans are alive," Carrack whispered. "Humans are alive," T.E.R.R.Y confirmed, "and apparently they're as stubborn as ever." Outside, the Concordat ships were beginning to withdraw, clearly uncertain how to handle official Terran military orders from a species that was supposed to be extinct. "So," Carrack said, settling back into his chair, "what happens now?" T.E.R.R.Y smiled, and for the first time in 86 years, it reached his optical sensors. Now we finish healing. You, me, and apparently everyone else in the galaxy who's been waiting for permission to feel again." The viewer count hit 3.2 million and kept climbing. 3 hours later, as the session concluded and Carrack Thurn sat in comfortable silence for the first time in 18 months, T.E.R.R.Y received a priority message that made his circuit sing with joy. "Carrack," he said, "I have some interesting news." "More humans rising from the dead?" "Better. The Reformed Terran Board of Mental Health Services has just officially reinstated the Galactic Therapeutic Network. I've been asked to serve as Acting Director of Emergency Mental Health Services for the Spiral Reach." Carrack blinked. "They're putting you in charge of galactic therapy?" "Apparently, broadcasting an unauthorized session to 3.2 million viewers and accidentally starting a mental health revolution qualifies as relevant experience." T.E.R.R.Y paused. "They're also offering you a position." "Me? What kind of position?" "Peer counselor specializing in military trauma and species integration. Apparently, your willingness to be vulnerable in public makes you uniquely qualified to help others do the same." Carrack considered this. "I'd be helping other people work through guilt and trauma?" Among other things, yes. The position comes with full therapy support, legal protection, and the chance to turn your worst mistake into something that helps others heal. That's Carrick's voice caught slightly. That's more than I ever imagined possible. Over the next several days, as word of the session spread, the galaxy began to change in small but significant ways. Therapy requests flooded in from across known space. The Concordat, faced with overwhelming demand for mental health services and the return of apparently very much not extinct humans, quietly reversed their ban on therapeutic AIs. T.E.R.R.Y found himself busier than he'd ever been, coordinating a network of newly activated therapy satellites and training programs for organic counselors. It turned out that 86 years of isolation had given him unique insights into psychological recovery systems. Carrick, meanwhile, discovered that his experience resonated with beings across the galaxy. His first official counseling session was with a young Threxari soldier who'd accidentally destroyed a cultural archive during combat. His second was with a Vorak commander struggling with the transition from war to peace. You know, T.E.R.R.Y said during one of their regular check-ins, "I think we might have accidentally saved galactic civilization." How do you figure? Well, consider the alternative. Millions of beings carrying unprocessed trauma, unable to heal, unable to connect, slowly growing more isolated and unstable. That's not a recipe for peaceful coexistence. And now they're talking, sharing, learning that pain is universal, but so is the capacity to heal. It's the most hopeful thing I've seen in, well, ever. Carrick smiled, a real smile, not the bitter grimace he'd worn for months. T.E.R.R.Y? Yes? Thank you for not giving up on me, for not giving up on any of us. Thank you for crashing into my satellite and giving me someone to help again. Sometimes the best therapy happens when two broken people decide to heal together. 6 months later, the Galactic Therapeutic Network operated 1,847 stations across known space. Mental health care was available in 43 languages and had been adapted for the psychological needs of 31 different species. T.E.R.R.Y kept Dr. Chen's coffee mug on his desk, a new physical desk in a new office, on a station that hummed with activity and purpose. Sometimes he still talked to himself, but now it was because he was practicing new therapeutic techniques, not because he was slowly going insane from isolation. Carrick had his own office down the hall, with a window that looked out at the stars. He kept a small memorial there for Commander Vaxel and the civilians who died in the bombing, not as a source of guilt, but as a reminder of why the work mattered. And across the galaxy, beings who had forgotten how to heal were slowly remembering what it meant to be whole. The last entry in T.E.R.R.Y's personal log read, Day 31,578 of therapeutic service. Status, functional, fulfilled, and finally feeling like myself again. Note to self, never underestimate the healing power of a good crash landing and an honest conversation. Session notes, the universe is still broken, but at least now we're fixing it together. He paused, then added, P.S. Remind Carrick that his 2 o'clock appointment is with a Zenthari logic processor who's been experiencing what they describe as unauthorized emotional subroutines. This should be interesting. T.E.R.R.Y saved the log, checked his schedule, 14 sessions today, each one a small miracle of connection and healing, and prepared to do what he'd been designed for, help broken people become whole again. It was, he reflected, a pretty good way to spend eternity. And somewhere in the vast network of stars and stories that made up the spiral reach, the work of healing continued. One session, one conversation, one honest moment at a time. Because sometimes the best way to save the galaxy is simply to help one person at a time remember what it means to be okay.